Good morning, Carol Johnson.
Good morning, grand rising to you, my brother. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Glad to be here. Like they say, better to be seen than be viewed.
I know that's right. Glad to be any.
hmm Absolutely. So this morning I wanted to clear up some mixed misconceptions about the vaccine. Everybody's heard about the vaccine. Everybody has a question. Should I get the vaccine? Should I get the vaccine? And so the first thing we want to break down is the fact that if somebody tells you they're going to give you all the information about the vaccine, they're already not giving you all the information because it's not one vaccine, it's several vaccines. So the vaccines are the richest horse race in human history. There are several players that are in there that are all trying to get their vaccines to market. And remember, this is not just in our country, it's in the world. So I wanted to take the time and break it down for people so they would understand what's going on a global basis. Because if you see the big picture, then it gives you a little bit more information in terms of what you need to do or what you need to know about your personal decisions. So we will not get into any specifics about whether you should take it or not take it because there is information that everybody needs to sort out on their own in order to make that decision. But I hope that when people finish listening to this, they'll have a better understanding of what's going on. So, first thing I want to do, so we're going to talk about the countries that are making the vaccine and supported by their countries. We're going to talk about what's happening with all the countries in the world that are buying up the vaccine. And we're going to talk about so the countries, um, the cash, and the colonialism. And when I say colonialism, just think racism. But we're going to get into that. So first, let's take a picture of this. Take a look at this picture here. Now, this graphic talks about what each country has bought in terms of buying a vaccine. First of all, let me make this a little bit bigger so people can see what's going on. So in this is like the whole pie here, and who's spending the most money. So it says how many COVID-19 vaccines has each country bought. So the biggest country right now in terms of pre-buying the vaccine is actually India, that has bought 22.7% of, of of the vaccine that's coming out. Um, and then the European Union collectively has bought 21.9%. And that 20.7% is about $1.5 billion. The 21.9% with the European Union is $1.6 billion. The United States has bought 13.9% of it, representing about $1 billion. And then Canada's bought 4.9%. Japan has bought 4%. Brazil has bought 2.7%. Indonesia has bought 4.7%. The United Kingdom has bought 4.9%. Mexico 2%, and then a few smaller countries that have bought even smaller percentages. Now, the interesting thing as you look at this pie is what's missing from this pie. So, what's missing from the pie is China. What's missing from this pie is Russia. And what's missing from the pie is Africa. So, now there's also something that's interesting that's on this chart is that toward the right you see this little gray area that says COVAX 9.7%. So 9.7% is about 10%. So going back to the history of these vaccines, it seems that what usually happens when a vaccine comes out is that all of the wealthy countries buy up all the vaccine, and usually the non-wealthy countries get stuck with the scraps. And if they get the vaccine at all, they usually get it late, and they usually get a little bit of it. Um, in this pandemic, I think enough smart heads realize that you can't have, even if the poorer countries don't get the vaccine, they're never going to get this pandemic to stop, because everybody has to be able to stop the vaccine. So what they've done is that COVAX is like a 10% set aside for all the countries that evidently are not buying the vaccine directly. And COVAX is coordinated by the World Health Organization. So this is where I say the colonialism and racism is afoot, because for all of Africa to have to be in this 10%, none of the African countries, even Nigeria, countries that have a lot of their own money, they are not buying the vaccine directly. They're they're getting it through this COVAX, and so that's something that we need to look at in terms of how that's going to impact globally how this vaccine gets distributed. So now what I want to show you is another uh, graph to give you a better picture of what that means. So let me reach back into this and hold on. Um, COVID. Okay, here we go. Now this picture is very interesting. Obviously, it's a map of the world, and you see the countries are in different colors here. So the 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 gold colors represent countries that are buying the vaccine directly. And these countries have also committed to um, put a portion of the money they spend into the COVAX so that the other countries can have it. So you have the gold countries, and you see that's Canada, there's Mexico, most of South America, Brazil and Venezuela, Colombia, Peru, Argentina. Most of these countries have committed to supporting the COVAX, except for Bolivia. Now, the blue countries are countries that are eligible to get vaccine through the COVAX. So when you see the blue, you see a handful of countries in South America. You see Guyana, Bolivia, uh, um, and in Africa, you see most of Africa is eligible to get the vaccine through the COVAX, and that's Egypt and Sudan, Niger, Mali, Nigeria, so forth. And except for Libya, which is buying its own, Saudi Arabia, South Africa, and Namibia, these gold countries in the bottom, they are buying it, but all the rest of Africa has to get their vaccine through the COVAX. India has to get its vaccine through the COVAX. Mongolia has to get its vaccine from the COVAX. Now you see gold countries. Australia is supporting the COVAX, and China is supporting the COVAX. Now, guess who is not supporting the COVAX? Three main countries: Russia, United States, and Greenland. Now, Greenland Greenland has such a small population, it doesn't really matter. You see, they need what it's saying. They need like um 22,000 doses of the viruses, as opposed to the United States that needs 131 million. So um, Russia and the United States are doing some different things. So let's talk about what they are doing. But but you see this the division, and you see Africa is left out, and I think that that's something that we have to keep our eye on as this thing develops. Um, so that's the global picture. Let's talk about what's going on in the countries that are actually producing the virus, producing the vaccine. So Russia, the reason why Russia is not they're not supporting the COVAX, and they're not getting they're not part of that pie, because the Russians have their own vaccine. It's called the Sputnik 5. And the reason why the Russians call it the Sputnik is, for those of you who know history, Sputnik was the name of their space program. And that was their big program to show the world how important and powerful the Russians were. And they were the first ones to get to space. And that created the whole space race between the US and the Russia. We had to respond because they got into space first. So we had to crank this whole thing up, put a man on the moon. So the word Sputnik is very, very powerful and important to the Russians, and they regard this race for the vaccine as being so important that they called it Sputnik, and there's a sense of their country pride around them coming up with their own vaccine. So you haven't heard about it in the U.S. papers. We just hear about the ones that are coming here because they're probably never going to sell the Russian vaccine here, just as they're probably never going to sell the American vaccines in Russia. So Russia wants to sell its vaccine to its own people, the Sputnik, but they also want to sell it to other countries as well. Also, China has its own vaccine. China is developing about 5 vaccines of their own. One is called Sinovac, one is called Sinopharm, and there are 3 others who I don't know the names of. But China is rushing theirs to market. Russia and China have already had their vaccines marketed because they kind of sped it up, and many are saying that they skipped the phase 3 trials that other countries are doing. Um, do you hear any background noise when we're talking, or do you hear me clearly? Okay,
I can
good.
hear you clearly.
Okay. So, so this is the race. This is the global race. When they say the vaccine, every country that can make vaccines are trying to get theirs to market, and we are trying to do the same thing here. So let's talk a little bit about what's going on here in the U.S. Um, so we've heard about Pfizer, and we've heard about Moderna, and then we had this Operation Warp Speed. So there's actually 5 vaccines coming out of the U.S. There's Pfizer, Moderna, there is Novavax, there's Janssen, and there is GSK. So we've heard about the Pfizer that was the first one approved here. Um, we heard there are some issues in terms of people who have allergies. And so there have been a few cases where people who have allergies have had strong reactions to it. And so certainly I would say that if you suffer from allergies, if you carry an EpiPen, you might want to reconsider whether you want to be one of the first ones to take the Pfizer vaccine. Um, the Moderna vaccine just got approved last week, and so they're starting to roll out the distribution of that. There's another one called Novavax, and Novavax got $1.6 billion from Operation Warp Speed, but Novavax is a little bit behind. They haven't even started their phase 3 trials yet. So we haven't heard much about them because even though they got a lot of money, they're not ready to bring theirs to market. There is GSK, and GSK got $2.1 billion from Operation Warp Speed, and they are partnering with a French company called Sanofi, and they're also partnering with a Chinese company as well. And then from England, we have AstraZeneca with the University of Oxford. And Germany has one company called CureVac that is beginning their phase 3 trials. So there are a lot of vaccines that are there in the market. And, one of the things that we saw in this particular, going back to this, let's see. I didn't, let's see. Let me show you this screen again. Okay, so going back to this screen, I want to show you something else, which is okay. That's not it. Um, okay, so that's still not what I'm looking for. Uh,
But one thing for sure, we knew there would be a race, and
mhm.
always, based on finances.
Right. It's really important that we kind of follow the money on these things to really understand what's going on with this vaccine. Um, okay, so back to this here. So we took a look at this pie before. Now, um, this chart here shows the different companies and the different countries. It seems like a lot going on there, but this is where it really gets interesting. So I told you that Novavax was an American company that got one. They got several $billions from our Operation Warp Speed. And the interesting thing about it is that they have pre-sold all of their vaccine to go to India. You know, they're selling all of their stuff directly to India. So even though we put $2.1 billion up to develop Novavax, none of that vaccine is actually coming here. Um, you know, uh,
Break that down again and remind people what warp speed is.
Yeah, so Operation Warp Speed was the U.S. government effort to get this vaccine produced as quickly as possible. And so basically, you know, we spend a lot of money to develop these vaccines. Let's see if I can get a little bit more specifics about it. Operation Warp Speed's goal is to produce and deliver 300 million doses of safe and effective vaccines, with the initial doses available by January 2021, which they met as part of a broader strategy to develop the manufacturing and distribution of COVID-19 vaccines. So this came through our Department of Health and Human Services. Um, let's see. Uh, let's uh, let's do this. I'm actually going to play a little video about Operation Warp Speed, just so we can really have some specifics straight from the horse's mouth. So let's see if I can make this happen. Um, Here we go.
Operation Warp Speed is a fast-paced effort to bring COVID-19 vaccines and therapeutics to the American people. I am General Gus Perna, and here are 5 things to know about Operation Warp Speed. First,
Mhm.
Operation Warp Speed is a partnership between the
Oh,
Department of
don't do
Health and
that,
Human
please.
Services and the Department of Defense and other federal organizations to develop, manufacture, and deliver vaccines and therapeutics to the American people in order to move past this pandemic. Second, science is driving all of our decisions. We are not cutting any corners with respect to safety and efficacy. We need to do this the right way. We are working with 6 drug manufacturers who are putting their vaccine candidates through the same rigorous clinical trials that we do for every pharmaceutical. Third, we have worked with the manufacturers to help them scale up operations in order to produce vaccines and therapeutics. We have purchased and secured supplies needed to deliver and administer the drug, everything from the vials that hold the vaccine to the syringes and needles that will be used to put shots into arms. Fourth, the military is bringing planning and logistics expertise to this operation, working across the supply chains from manufacturing to delivery to coordinate vaccines and their movement across the country to all states, territories, and federal agencies. But commercial industry, not the military, will physically ship and distribute the vaccines to your local areas. And fifth, Operation Warp Speed will be successful because of this whole of America approach, drawing from the best of industry, academia, science, and defense in order to fight this pandemic. We have been transparent and open about our process, and now it's up to you, America. When the vaccine is ready and available, I hope you answer the call. In order to learn more about Operation Warp Speed, check out the HHS and DoD websites.
So that was the PR pitch for Operation Warp Speed, and it's great to see the military behind it. But this is about business and it's about money, and so what they didn't talk about is that billions of dollars went to these pharmaceutical companies to get the vaccines to market as quickly as possible. Now, I should note that Pfizer did not take money from Operation Warp Speed, so that they kept the money coming from their own pocket in order to develop that. And I think it also gave them some independence when it came to not having to do photo ops with President Trump when it came time to actually roll out their vaccine. One of the things that I read in a publication about behind the scenes is that Trump was angry because the Pfizer executives wouldn't come to the White House to take pictures with him, and they didn't have to because they didn't take his money. Um, and as we know, Um, the FDA was fast tracking these things, and we're really hoping to get it done before the election so that he could take credit for the vaccines. In fact, his press secretary was calling the vaccine the Trump vaccine. And again, it's not one vaccine. It's six companies from, five from America, one from the U.S. that are part of the U.S. program, and as well as the Russians and the Chinese. Um, and it's a mad scramble to get this vaccine out to as many people as possible. Now, we've heard a little bit about the fact that some of these vaccines require very, very cold storage. And certainly, out of the two that are coming up, the Pfizer vaccine requires the storage at like 70 degrees below Celsius zero. And the Moderna vaccine does not require as much storage. And so these things are important factors because it speaks to how difficult is it for them to actually get these huge numbers out there, and what's required behind the scenes to actually have this cold storage. And it also affects which vaccines can be sold in countries that don't have that type of infrastructure. Certainly across Africa, you're not going to have the resources for refrigeration, so that it's more than likely that the Pfizer vaccine will not be as viable for countries in, say, sub-Saharan Africa or Caribbean countries. And so we're seeing these different vaccines roll out, and it's going to be important for all of us to just continue to follow information and really start to find out the differences between them, because they were all of these vaccines have been rushed to market, and there's been emergency authorizations to fast track them and improve them. And we understand why that is, because the virus is raging globally, and people really need to get it as soon as possible. But at the same point in time, it also means that um, we have to really wonder how extensive and thorough the testing has been. And certainly, there's been not enough time to know really what the long-term effects of the vaccine are. So those are the things that we can look at and hopefully understand what's going on as we make the decisions. Right now, the choices here in the U.S. are the Moderna vaccine, the Pfizer vaccine, and in January, Janssen, which is Janssen is a European company, but it's actually owned by Johnson and Johnson, your cousins, Carol. And so they like the J's. So Janssen is owned by Johnson and Johnson, and they are looking to get their vaccine out in January. So it's likely that theirs will be the third one that's improved in January. So that's a little bit about the horse race that's going on with the vaccines. We continue to remind people that whether you plan to take the vaccines or not, that you need to boost your immune system up, because as we know and understand about the vaccines primarily their job is to alert your body um, to this virus, so that if your body sees it, it recognizes it early enough for your body's immune system to work to defeat the virus. So you still need your body's immune system to defeat the virus. Yeah, had a little glitch there. So that's we continue to tell you that if you're not doing the things to boost your immune system, you're not going to get the best results from the virus. And certainly, doing those things to boost your immune system will probably help you. Uh, as we've seen, all these viruses look like they are a two-shot virus. Means you have to take the initial shot, and then either 3 to 4 weeks later you're going to take a second shot, and it's only after the second shot where you really have the full protection of the virus. So the first shot is really to get your body acclimated to it, and then I believe they're taking several weeks before you take the second shot to basically give your body time to recognize it, and I think it also gives some space that if there's any real adverse reactions, they see it within that first 30 days or so. And so all of these solutions, regardless of whether they're the super cold one or the less cold one, they all are two-shot vaccines. And so we still don't know going forward. I think there's been some talk that people will expect that taking this shot will be a regular annual thing, like taking the flu shot. Um, but again, we're still very early in this, and we have no long-term data on how effective it is, whether the vaccine will be effective as the virus may mutate. If the virus mutates, will this vaccine be effective, or does it have to be a new one every year, like the flu shot? So there are a lot of questions that we have that still haven't been answered, and we invite everyone to just learn more about it, and make an informed decision for yourself as far as what you want to do. Certainly, if you're in an at-risk population, people who have exposure to the public, a lot of people are feeling like in order for them to operate the way they've been operating, they feel like the vaccine is really going to be a necessity. And then there are others who are like, well, I'm sequestered away from people. I'm going to stay away from people for a while. I'm going to wait and see and get more information. And again, we're not telling you either way what you should do or not do, but hopefully you get more information and get informed by it. One of the reasons why people they have this term vaccine hesitancy, and they talk about it like it's a mental illness, but it's not a mental illness. There's a certain amount of common sense, especially in African American communities. We obviously have a long memory, and we remember what happened with healthcare and with treatments in the past in terms of the Tuskegee experiment, where the same CDC that is now coordinating things for this pandemic basically treated us like test animals and had black men exposed to an illness. They didn't even when they found out what the illness was, they didn't actually give them the treatment. And so we haven't forgotten those things. And I'm not suggesting that the same CDC is doing the same things, but it causes us to at least pause and look at the situation and understand it. And then from a business standpoint, there's also the issue of the fact that vaccine manufacturers don't have any liability. So what I mean about that is that there's actually a law on the books that's saying that um, if there is a problem with a vaccine, that you cannot sue a vaccine manufacturer. And that's an interesting and problematic truth that is not really widely discussed, but you can look it up for yourself. You can Google, vaccine manufacturers you can't sue or something like that, and you'll get the information. It's on the law books as a federal law that you can't sue vaccine manufacturers. And to me, that's important because liability has always been something that has kept companies in check. We here in America, we've come to accept certain things as standard. That if something doesn't work, if a manufacturer puts out a toy, and a toy that has lead in it, and the lead affects a child, whether the manufacturer knew about it or not, down the road we can sue that manufacturer. If a car is unsafe, the Pinto, the Edsel, we've had these cars, these manufacturers are liable. We've seen it in the medical community when you see some of these rare forms of cancer, and you see these commercials late at night. Do you have, some type of lymphoma? You can join this class action lawsuit and you could get money. And we joke about these things because a lot of times it just seems like lawyers chasing a payday. But if you were one of those people affected by that, and you know that at least there was some monetary compensation to ease the pain of losing a loved one, or suffering, that's something that people take advantage of it, and it keeps the companies honest in terms of what type of product they deliver to you. So we have this situation now where the goal is to have hundreds of millions of people taking this vaccine or vaccines, and if there's a problem with it, there's nobody there's nobody you can go to for any type of compensation because it's against the law. So these are things that I think are legitimate reasons why we want to know, with a certainty, that there is enough safety protocols around all of these things that roll out. And we want more transparency in terms of people talking about the differences between these vaccines. So as we go forward, we need to hear more about which vaccines are more effective. Is the Pfizer vaccine more effective than the Moderna? Is the Janssen vaccine, because they took a little bit longer, is that more effective? Is it more safe? And so as this data comes out, we want it not only to be transmitted, but we want to understand the sources. We want to know that the people who are reviewing this data are independent of the companies that actually develop it, so that we can trust the information that we get. So I think that's all I have at this point in time to say. Do you think that was a helpful explanation in terms of the vaccines?
I certainly do. I mean, we have to be
Hmm.
informed. They have to look and be
Hmm.
transparent about it. With the secrecy, um, and push that narrative
Hmm.
forward. This problem now. Um, um, all the agencies in charge are rushing to get a dialogue out
Hmm.
because of the vaccine hesitancy.
Hmm.
But you have to remember, you created the problem.
Exactly. Hmm.
Been our problem as long as African American have been on these shores
Hmm.
continuously, and it continues today. You
Hmm.
know, with the violence against us um, by people, and the murdering of people, of color, simply
Hmm.
because of the color of our skin. So that continues. But then when you look at something like, it's always in the Black, brown, and indigenous communities. When you look at the situation that's going on even now with the ICE agents, we all know that's the Immigration and Custom Enforcement Service that
Hmm.
was literally snatching babies from their parents' arms.
Hmm.
3,000 kids are lost. They say they'll never find them, and then you've got like close to 600 parents who are lost.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you look at these things happening to these people of Hispanics, where this is happening, you've got another group that have present time situations taking place,
Mm-hmm.
and you want people to trust you. We've got the situation where these same camps, where these people are thrown into these cells, whose wombs are being removed.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when you're taking and you're looking at what you are doing to what you've done to certain segments of the American population, you can't expect people to all of a sudden say, "Well, sure, we trust you. We trust what you're going to do. We trust you to inject us with something that we have no clear understanding of."
Mm-hmm.
They've got to change the dialogue. In a lot of
Absolutely.
cases, a lot of us are being pulled into different, conversations. What can we do? What can we do? What can we do? My answer is clear. I didn't create the problem. Don't look for me to solve it. You
Right.
have to figure it out. And when
Mm-hmm.
you figure it out, the same way you throw so much money away, the same way you've allowed months and months and months of FB and internet doctors and conspiracy theorists to put all of this stuff on social media and
Mm-hmm.
invest in the fear of people, the same way they have done this, you have to push even harder.
Mm-hmm.
Those in charge have got to push twice as hard. The same way, and this might be key, the same way people of color can do the same thing that other people do, but we got to push so much harder.
Mm-hmm.
Be better trained, we may be better educated, we may have more experience and time in a field, but we have to push twice as hard as someone who's just coming on board,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And so those conversations have got to be created at the top levels. And that you got to make sure it comes down to the hyper local level.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what we're seeing is, I know Pfizer, they're still looking for people to do the trials. Pfizer has a program out of Bellevue Hospital,
Mm-hmm.
looking for people of color to do
Mm-hmm.
trials. As of now, I believe it's 36% of the people that participated in the vaccine trials were African American.
Mm-hmm.
They're looking for more people. Um, but a lot of it is just a lot late,
Mm-hmm.
a lot late. So I clearly understand the hesitancy on a personal level. I have a hesitancy, and it's not even so much in terms of racism. I just
Mm-hmm.
have a hesitancy because they're not being transparent
That's
enough.
it. That's it. And what they're sharing with us is more PR and less actual meat about what it is that they're bringing to us, what the differences are, and speak to us like adults. I recognize that coming out of the aftermath of the Trump administration, that there's trust in the government is at an all-time low, and so I understand that's why they have President Obama and Joe Biden and the other ex presidents, Clinton and Bush, all taking the vaccine publicly to show safety. But that doesn't really show much of anything, because one of the things that we've seen from this vaccine is that the health care options that people in power get are not the same as the healthcare options that we get. And so it's great to watch a TV show and see someone get vaccinated on TV, but we don't know that vaccine is the same one. And again, I'm not saying this to put a conspiracy theory, but saying this to think about the mindset. We know that President Trump, when he got COVID, he got access to all types of treatments that nobody else has access to. And he was out within, he went from on a Friday having oxygen deficits that they had to rush him by helicopter to Walter Reed. And by Tuesday or Wednesday, he's back in the White House and he's back on the campaign trail. And that's because he got a lot of treatment and none of it was a vaccine, and it got him back up on his feet. Now you have these people like Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz, who they got the vaccine already. They're not in any of the risk groups. They've been hanging around with super spreaders. They should be the last people who get the vaccine, but because they're senators, they get it like that. So these are some of the other reasons why there is a natural distrust of a lot of the information surrounding it. And it's coming from all sides of the political spectrum. There are people who are part of the crazy far right conspiracy theories. They don't even believe in masks. They think the whole thing is a hoax even as they're dying in the hospital. And then there are people who recognize that this is a real health threat, but have a problem trusting the health system that allowed this thing to get out of control. And let us be clear, there is plenty of evidence to support that it wasn't just Trump's dropping the ball. The whole medical system dropped the ball in terms of being prepared for this pandemic. And now we're being presented as one way out of this thing, which is the vaccine. And we continue to see that effective treatments have been poo-pooed. Um, we started talking about vitamin D in March, and now we're here in December, and there are a ton of studies that shown that there is a direct correlation between vitamin D deficiency and people who have all of the COVID-19 symptoms, especially the serious ones. So it would seem like it would make sense to at least promote, one of the easiest steps that people can do to help prepare their bodies for it is taking vitamin D. We also said take vitamin C, take zinc, take melatonin. All these recommendations are based on doctor studies, peer reviewed studies. There's plenty of information on all of these things right now to say that this is an important step in all of the steps to protect you. Last week we talked about ivermectin, which is a drug that has had positive results in random controlled trials and observational studies, but no one talks about that. And so when we see, and this is not to say that these are substitutes for the vaccine. It's saying that in a pandemic where we've already lost 300,000 people, we should be using every avenue at our disposal to help prepare people to have the best outcomes. And we're not necessarily seeing that from either our health officials. And we obviously expect that the companies that make the vaccine are going to push those vaccines, or they're going to push their solutions that are profitable. This is what companies do. And so, we have to regard them in that fashion. And when we have companies that can make profit but have no risk in this, all the risk is on us, the public who takes these vaccines. We're taking the risk. There's no risk being taken by the companies. And so when somebody uses that term vaccine hesitancy, I say, well, it's common sense to regard any serious decision concerning your health. You want to know as much of the facts as possible. We want to know how it works. We want to know how is it done. We want to understand what are the risks of taking it versus the risk of not taking it. And we know some of the information, but we haven't been given all of the information. So.
So when you look at that, that's one conversation that's taking place because that Regeneron cocktail, that Trump got, and and
Mm.
and, and former Mayor Giuliani said it. He told us. See, that's the only thing that I love about these people is because the things, I don't know if it's simply because they're mentally ill or because, they want you to know that, I've got it like that. But he said he got it because he was a celebrity. And
Hmm.
so quite a few of them, including Dr. Ben Carson, got these hot cocktails. And so the
Hmm.
first thing, you gotta look at your game plan. We already know who's meant to be left out. But then when you switch it and want those same people to get on board with something, you have to see up to date stuff that's happening and what's creating the hesitancy. These people got it, which told America and told the world, you allowed, at that point, it was about 280,000 people to die when you already had something that could work.
Hmm.
Even if it was still in the experimental phase, these people and a lot of those drugs that was part of that cocktail were things that were supposed to be used towards the end times of somebody with COVID when they got to a certain point. So if this is the fact, you had these things and you still allowed hundreds of thousands of people to die. So you had it there and you didn't offer it to any of those other people who are now being put in ICU units and intubated. And so when you look at those kind of things, and that's the most recent, and now you come out with the vaccine, and people are like, really? What's in that stuff? You had the ability to help save my mother, my grandmother, my child, my father. And you guys was all touting your celebrity and getting this cocktail, keeping yourselves alive, and still running out and telling people, don't be afraid, don't let it rule your life. Don't let COVID, who's taken all these hundreds of thousands of people's lives, don't let it rule your life. And now you come out with the vaccine, and it's almost like you're saying, trust me, trust us, we're worth it. What you're doing is you're taking a scared group of people, and now you're telling people to trust you. It's on you, America. You're gonna have to fix this.
And the other thing is that we haven't forgotten the fiasco around testing, because the initial thing, the initial gap in privilege was just finding out whether you had it or not. We've gone through months and months where we've had to fight and fight just to get testing resources in our neighborhood, when celebrities got it and in 10 minutes they got a test. When Tom Hanks and Idris Elba and these folks in the early stage of it, they found out. Well, how did they find out? They got tested like that. They had a test done, and
And they
so
weren't waiting weeks for results either.
they weren't waiting. They got their results right away. So there's always been this gap in testing, and as the testing ramped up, we've still seen the gap that our black and brown neighborhoods were always the last ones to get the test, even as the neighborhoods that were the least effective had the best testing, and we've shown those maps in the past, and we can show them again. But the
Yesterday,
point.
let me just say this. I was out yesterday assisting
Mhm.
distribution of PPE, and it was a testing site. So this is something that's going on in New York City. It's hashtag get tested or hashtag Tuesday, testing Tuesday, something like that. So I believe like every Tuesday, they're like really pushing for people to go to be tested.
Mhm.
Um, Now there's a van. It's a van, but the van
Mhm.
this little step, a little stool, a little stepping stool. And I went to the man in charge and I said, I just pointed to the van. I said, not a good idea. He said, why? And I just pointed to my scooter. He said, "Oh, you can't get up there. You can't even get up there with assistance." I said, "First of all, you should never assume that someone in a chair can walk.
Mm-hmm.
So that would not be the go-to. You wouldn't say, well, we'll just help you out of the chair and we'll just help you up the stairs and down the stairs." That should not be an assumption. And there's a lot
Mm-hmm.
of them in Harlem. Even the
Mm-hmm.
EKGs. They have the machines that's doing the free EKGs that's going around our neighborhoods. They've got even more steps to get in there. And again,
Mm-hmm.
people were like offering me assistance to get into the van. Why are these things not available where it already has a ramp?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for that, you can get some of those accessorized buses and put another strip around it
Mm-hmm.
so that people can actually get in. And then the guy says to me, "Well, they'll come out and they can do the test." I said, "Now, put yourself in my position. We're dealing with a airborne disease. Would you really want to be in the wide open with an airborne disease that could land on that swab before it goes in my nose?" And the guy I got crickets. Sometimes when you say things to people that kind of make sense, they're
Mm-hmm.
kind of angry because they can't figure it out. They're looking for some way to dispute what you're saying, but they really can't dispute it.
Mm-hmm.
But when you look at this, at what point are these things going to change? So here we are. You've got these vans. You still have a certain segment that can't get into the vans who would like to be tested. That really, and it wasn't a long wait for people to go in, maybe 10 minutes. But then a friend of mine comes along who's part of our radio team, and she has vertigo. So she's walking around and she's like, "Oh my God, these steps. It's only 2 steps." But when you have certain medical conditions, people can't take the steps. They think just because you're walking, they had to help her in and out of the van. And she's walking around. So she says, "Yeah, I have vertigo." I mean, man, I when I saw those steps, I thought I was gonna fall. So this is sitting in East Harlem.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not helping us.
And so if these are the challenges for us just in terms of getting testing, it's a bit of a stretch to ask people this to say, okay, we weren't able to get you the test, but now we can get you the vaccine. So you don't need the test. You just take the vaccine. Just take it. Just
Right.
trust, just trust us.
And even with our
Um,
medical systems that's doing them, like a lot of the medical clinics, you still have to have some type of either insurance or they have to sign you up to try to get them. They're not going to deny you the test, but you have to fill out documents so that they can submit these things to Medicaid. And then I guess it would be their problem, in terms of getting reimbursed. But then there's lines and there's still appointments that need to be made. We're still in the wintertime. You still have people who have underlying illnesses. They don't want to wait on lines. They don't want to do those kind of things. It's getting colder. So here we are 9 months later. You haven't stepped up with the basic stuff that should take place during a pandemic.
mhm.
This is as basic as it gets. Provide
Right.
PPE, provide testing sites. This is the same. We're still blowing the same horn nine
Hmm.
months later. And so, if anybody's on here from any of those departments, and you guys know who you are,
Hmm.
you need to pay strict attention to what we're talking about. And now, when we get off this broadcast, you need to get your colleagues together and say, these people are telling us why people don't want to do this and they don't want to do that. This time is when we haven't seen it yet. We still haven't seen the surge yet. It has not
Right.
gotten really, really cold. So
Hmm.
people are not on real lockdown, even though the numbers are rising. But this is the time you really need to create something that's going to get through to people. At least enough so that people will say, you know something, let me at least let me look at it. Let me look at it. Let me consider the possibility. If you can even get people to that phase, let me consider the possibility and I can make an informed decision on these vaccines. You got to get people at least to that stage because right now they're at the heck no, 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 I'm not taking it. So this you
Um,
work cut out for you.
yeah. And also a reminder, this vaccine is supposed to be free, as in free. And so it's another reason why we have to keep our eyes on this because we found that the testing was supposed to be free, but the testing was not always free. Now, I'm not saying that we've heard anything to the contrary about it, but I'm saying that based on our previous past, right, fresh in our memory experience about the testing, we want to be given to understand, how free is free. And how long does that extend? And so, is it free for the first two and then it gets charged later? And does it get charged to insurance? And, we're getting the information piecemeal.
Yeah,
So we really need more of an effort to actually give us more of the facts and details about how this is supposed to work. How is it supposed to work now? How is it supposed to work going forward? Because I think we can surmise that number one, the vaccine manufacturers are going to be paid one way or the other. And so we recognize that the Operation Warp Speed was supposed to basically buy us a whole bunch of the vaccine that we could distribute to this country. But does that mean, again, explain to us what that means when you say it's free? Does that mean, I would assume it means at least the first two shots? Are we expected to take two shots and then come back next year and take another two shots like the flu? So a lot of questions still need to be answered. We're going to continue to keep watching and reading and looking critically at the information, which we encourage anyone to do. As we go into January, I expect we will probably have some doctors on our broadcast to talk about it. And we're consistently in dialogue with various healthcare professionals to get more information about this. And so, again, we're not conspiracy theorists. We look at the facts, but we look at all of the facts and we look at who is presenting the facts, and we remember everything. So if you told us X, you know, you told us in March that it would take a year and a half. Okay, we understand why they fast tracked it, and we understand it was an imperative to get it here by December, and so they've done that. But we also want to understand that all the steps have been taken to make sure that this is a safe, effective experience for everyone, and it is also um, free. If you told us it was free, we want it to be free. You told us testing was free. I can pull up a map with all the testing facilities in our neighborhood that are not free. So when we see inconsistencies, that's what causes hesitancy. It's like anything else. You tell us something, and then when you go down the road, and what you told us yesterday is not the same today. That creates hesitancy, and that's what we have right.
absolutely. And when you look at, how long people have been struggling, I guess money people, they will look at it differently when, um, poorer folk, like for the last 9 months have really, really been struggling with little things, little minute things like paying rent, like
Yeah.
putting food on their table,
Hmm.
you know, um, just general health of their parents, what's happening with their children. There's just so many things that's being left out. So you just can't take a huge thing like this and just throw it at us and say, take it. And now look at it, it's like constantly being slapped in the face. After what, 6 months, they're about to release the stimulus package. It's only half of what you got the last time. So people are saying, how much do you really care about me? Those things, like I just mentioned. I've been struggling. I've been struggling.
Mhm.
It's the wrong time to take food out of people's mouths, take the
Mhm.
nutrition out of people, and you have people who've been eating healthy. And because of what's going on now, their whole dietary plans have changed. And this is the time, if you're still not hearing people really push about healthy eating. But people are now deciding where they were even able to put a meat dish on the table before this. I mean, even if it's something small like franks and beans or a chicken. Now folk are like making decisions between, should we have peanut butter and jelly, tuna fish, or maybe how we gonna eat, period. There are parents who are going to sleep hungry because there's just not enough food. And the same way there was a lot of hungry people before this pandemic. I mean, double digits of millions people were hungry across America. That has had to have tripled now. Those same people didn't have cars. They had to walk to pantries. Those numbers have doubled and tripled.
Mhm.
And then you come out with a stimulus package with most of the folk that got the first one probably won't get any of this because other people have been added into it now. Families, and I'm not mad at them.
Mhm.
Families that weren't being dealt, that weren't eligible before. The law community has made them now eligible, so I'm not mad at them. But when you look at all of these different things that you continue to do, it's like stealing my money and asking me to help you find it. I mean, really, it's just that crazy. You got to look at you, America. You got to look at you. You have to look at everything. And when you play that tape, you play it all the way back to the beginning. Don't play it back to when things look kind of good. Certainly don't play it back to President Obama's time. Play it all the way back. Play it all
Mhm.
the way back and let it fast forward very slowly. And when you fast forward, if you take an honest look at what has happened over these last centuries and even present time, you'll see why we are where we are in our communities. Still in the first phases of the pandemic. So at some point, leadership can never be effective unless it first accepts its own failures. You want to accept your strengths, you have to accept your failures. And you have to speak on how miserably you failed this country and how you failed people of color continuously. And when you
Mhm.
have an honest conversation with yourself and your colleagues and all of you that make the decisions, then and only then should you be having all of these meetings about hesitancy, vaccine hesitancy, because the answer lies in there. So again, I say your dialogue have to change. Don't keep inviting us to the table. Because just because you took that we look alike too far, all black people look alike, you took that way too
Mhm.
far. We don't look alike and we don't think alike. So just
Mhm.
because I'm black, I can't make Bob decide on something that he doesn't want. And I can't make the next person see. You created it. You've got to figure out a way how to get through to people, and you need to do it now and stop playing. But your history dictates that you're not going to do that. You're thinking we're still out in the slave somewhere. We're
Mhm.
still in the field somewhere. That we just going to follow along like sheep. No, that's not happening, and you see it. But you
Mhm.
refuse to accept responsibility and do what needs to be done. And that's what people of color are saying to you. You need to get stuff right before you start looking for us to start just accepting whatever comes our way.
Mhm. And so, on that note, Carol, I think we should wrap up our live cast today and wrap it up by saying, first of all, we wish everybody a happy and safe and healthy holiday. Um, we recommend that you keep it close to home, and just you've got the information, so we're not gonna beat you over the head of it. But um, if you're listening to our broadcast, we assume that you're taking proper care of yourself. Um, Boost your immune system. Stay close to home. Don't visit grandma if you don't have to. Um, do your Christmas on other days. Don't be out there traveling on the day that everybody else is traveling. If you want to push it into next week, do that. Um, but just use common sense, use precaution, and we get through these things by taking care of each other, and that's what we do as families. That's what we do as communities. We're going to get through this. Share the information. We gave a lot of information today that we hope was useful. Go back in our archives and listen to the other broadcasts that we've done, because there have been gems and nuggets on all of these that can help you protect yourself and give yourself the best chance to be healthy during this pandemic. So, with that,
Absolutely.
hmm
Absolutely. So we wish you
and
well, as always.
yep, we got a message from our brother Mark, just talking about the countries around the world, but the money that America spends to send everywhere else, and then when our own people are challenged, all they've got is $600. Um, and this is as opposed to Canada, that has been giving their people $2,000 a month since March and April. So we see these inequities, and we have to address them. So, on that note, have a happy holiday, Carol. You stay healthy and safe. Everyone who's listening, stay healthy and safe, and
You
we'll see you in the new year. Or actually, it'll still be this year next week.
before. Yeah.
I'm just trying to get 2020 over as quickly as
Yeah,
possible.
I know. So let's
Yeah,
have New Year's party. Well, you may not be in the mood to party that early in the morning,
yeah,
but we can say fairly well to 2020 and
yeah,
just believe that things are going to get better.
yeah.
We believe things are going to get better. So, as always, stay well, stay at peace, pray, meditate, do whatever you have to do to keep yourself mentally strong and sane, and exercise and eat well. And, you know, we'll see each other again in the new year.
All right.